Knight, and this is the Child Care Business Coach podcast. I am joined today with Cori Berg, the director of Hope Day School in Texas. And Cori also started a Facebook page. It's called ECE From the Heart with Cori Berg. And Cori gives some great inspiring information, tries to really just help directors, people who are running centers right now through this crisis. She's just been a godsend helping people out throughout this time. So Cori, let's start there. What inspired you to start the ECE From the Heart?
Well, I just, going back, that was 9 weeks ago, 10 weeks ago. And like everybody else who was trying to figure out what to do, navigating this situation that none of us had experienced before. I knew that there were voices out there. And certainly, Evelyn, you have just been such a major help to so many people with all these business questions, myself included. And knowing that one thing that people really needed help with was kind of taking some of this information coming at us from various sources, whether it was the CDC or your state, which at that time was really limited information, and trying to figure out how to put that into a real working system of protocols. And we all know that, protocols aren't just a list that you can hand people. It's a whole system. It's a dynamic system. And the major piece of it is how we work with each other as coworkers, as teachers, as administrators, as owners. And that is such an important piece. And that I just thought that might be something I could help with, or at least document my own process through it. So that's kind of why I started the page. I actually had some friends who had been listening to some of the videos that I was doing and kind of got it started for me, and it went from there.
That is awesome. I love how we're watching different people emerge from a need that we saw early on in this. One of the things that I was talking about to people when I saw the desperation that was out there was just so much desperation. So I started telling people to find the gaps, to really look for gaps that they're noticed. And I was more referring to in their own communities and their own like preschool community, basically within their customers. But I think that's exactly what you did. You found a gap that needed to be filled, and you filled it, which is so nice. And I do want to mention, too, that through all of this and the time that you've put into helping people, you, too, have been open this whole time and running your center.
Right. Yeah. which I think is the unique piece in our field. And I think maybe this goes to some thoughts that I've had in general about our support network of trainers and consultants. So often what happens is when you reach that stage, you step out of the actual day-to-day business. And, that can definitely afford you a lot, some extra time. But one thing is that you have to watch to make sure that the information that you're giving is still relevant. And So for those of us who are here in the field actually doing it, it's really clear when you hear or read something from somebody who is not currently working this, because it is difficult, and there's no right answer to any of this, and we all have separate contexts. And so for me, those day-to-day experiences, when I go to talk to people, once a week or put up a video, it comes right out of my lived experience that may have happened that morning, and to make it real. So.
Right. And I've experienced the same exact thing. It's really hard. And I totally agree with you in that you can tell that some of the people coming up with information, they're not living it. And it is a very, very different when you are inside a center every day. Well, and you've experienced the same things, I'm sure, where every day it's like something new is just thrown at us. every day we have to change something because what we were doing yesterday suddenly isn't working today. We've got this new hurdle. The CDC comes out with a new guideline, or the state comes out with something new. So I say in the 20 years I've been doing this, I've never had to make so many quick policy changes, and just constant, you're just always nonstop on your toes. And I think you're absolutely right. I hear different consultants right now out there too, who don't work in a center, and they're trying their best, and they're coming up with these different suggestions that are based on industry standards. But honestly, right now, when you're in the thick of it, industry standards do not work right now. We are literally, yeah, I'm sure you feel the same, where we are reinventing the wheel every single day.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have used the phrase before that we are reimagining this industry. And I don't want to at all diminish the seriousness of this situation, but I think there are so many positive things that come out of it. And one of it is that we are prioritizing what is most important to us. And maybe we're also realizing where we had some gaps in our learning. You know, if you go to an early childhood conference, most of us are really drawn to the curriculum ones, or if we're we're a director or a manager or an owner, you might be drawn to some of the HR ones. But none of us has been excited about going to an infectious disease training.
Right.
Right. But it's such a basis of what we do is creating a safe environment adds to a loving environment. And that paying attention to some of these details doesn't have to be a scary thing. It actually, if you create a really good protocol for safety, it can allow you more freedom with your children. And so we're just being called to think in a different way.
Absolutely. I think one of the other things at that point, though, is that we, in our industry, we actually do a really, really good job of controlling infectious disease and whatnot, as it is. Our normal standard protocols are so good that when we do go above and beyond, we can actually, really minimize the spread of this. So I was actually pretty impressed. But I think that's something that, too, in our industry that we don't really think a lot about, that we do a good job in things like that. But we, and now when we are growing in that, it's really shown us where we needed to grow, but where we're also shining.
Yeah. And, that brings up another kind of concept that I've been talking quite a bit about, because as I listen to directors and early childhood leaders, and this is kind of switching topics just a little bit, there's such anxiety about meeting the social emotional needs of children in the midst of all of this sanitization and safety. And one of the things I've noticed just watching my team, and, my team, although every person is special, right? We could easily be any other team in the United States, right? And that what I have noticed is that we have to trust our teachers, that they know how to navigate through the social emotional landscape that has changed. They will figure out how to still connect with children and help children, when they're sad or when they're having separation anxiety because they've just been dropped off for the first time at a new door to the building.
Right.
They will figure out how to connect with kids. If you're wearing a mask or a shield, they will find a way to make that work. And I just want to make a call out to everybody to really try. I know it's hard, but to take some of that anxiety away and to trust your team that they will definitely figure this out.
Right. And just trusting your instincts. I totally agree with you. I think that good teachers in this field and good directors, they have that strong instinct and they know. And I could not agree with you more. I know in our infant room, something that we've really noticed is wearing the masks. The babies had a really hard time without seeing our facial expressions. So that
Okay.
was something that we really had to think about and start thinking like, okay, so how can we overcome this? Because you could just see them looking, and that's how babies communicate a lot. They're reading our expressions, they're reading how we feel and whatnot. So what we ended up doing is just really changing our tones, making them sound more excited, and
Mhm.
also talking a lot more with our hands. So
Yeah, definitely. You
it
just
was,
naturally adjust, don't you? I mean, you
yep,
make your eye expressions bigger, and it's not like you have to take a class in how to adjust. You just naturally will.
yep,
And
exactly.
you'll use your body and your positions in a little bit different way. And so that's so fascinating because, Evelyn, that's definitely a topic that so many people are talking about. We've only had one infant in my center, so it's a little bit, I haven't had as much experience, and they were really becoming a toddler through this process. So I'm so glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, we've been getting quite a few, and our numbers for children under one, we are hitting about 16 a day still. So it
Wow.
was pretty interesting to just really that observation on how they were really struggling to see facial expressions, and just how watching my teachers just learning how to exaggerate what, just their tones, and like you were saying, the eyes, and when they exaggerate the expressions, it helped the babies to still be able to read that and to feel secure. And now it is just kind of natural and second nature to them, and it's gotten so much better. But just to reiterate what you were saying, that just trusting their instincts, because that wasn't something I thought about. I had not thought about like, oh, how are the babies going to react to not seeing facial expressions? That was something that my teachers came to me and said, hey, we've noticed that this is an issue. And then they came up with a solution. So I totally agree. They do have that wonderful instinct. They will find it. And we have to trust the people that we trained. If you are a good leader, and as a director, if you did your job training your team and picking your team out, then you have to trust them, and you have to really be ready to let them follow their instincts and go. And, if you've done your job as a director, you're going to be okay.
Yeah, and I think for me, there was this point. It may have been about 2 weeks in where, whoa, my brain was just so tired of making decisions and
Yes.
trying to problem solve. And I just felt so crazy. That's the only word I can say is I felt crazy. And so I was talking with one of the teachers about it, and the words came out of my mind. I just do not want to have to make a single one more decision. And so then I started looking it up that your brain can have decision overload. And I realized what I had to do was engage my team to come up with solutions a lot more than I had. I think I didn't because I felt guilty that somehow, even though I know it's not reasonable to think this way, but so many of us do. I somehow felt guilty for like I was responsible for this crazy situation that my team members were in, that my teachers were in. So, but once I worked through that and I realized I've got to set this up differently. I have to find a way to encourage them to come up with a solution and then talk it through with me versus me just giving them the answer. And that shift in my thinking was so pivotal into our sustainability. And also for the teachers, they were much more willing to try things where they had come up with their own solution. And
Right.
I think that's a pretty common dilemma that directors have, is that they overfunction. And so it was a good opportunity to practice some new skills on my part.
Absolutely. And you empower your team that way. That's actually something I do train on. I train on what true delegation looks like. I think a lot of directors think that they're delegating, but what they're really doing is just assigning. They're not really
Yeah.
delegating. They're not truly delegating. They just assign tasks to their staff members, whether it's an assistant director or the teachers, but they're staying in control. And when you really delegate and you train your staff. And one of the things I train my directors is that your goal should always be to duplicate yourself. And as you're duplicating yourself, it does take a lot of that off of your shoulders. And you've got to trust that you've done that job of training them, duplicating yourself to the point that you're okay and you can release the outcome when they make those decisions. And is it going to look like your decision 100% of the time? No, it's not. And that was something I had a huge problem with when I started with the leadership journey is I wanted everything to be my way. And I ended up really having to step back and tell myself, okay, this isn't how I would have done it, but it works. It's good. And I need to let go of the way I would have done it and recognize that some other people may have just as good ideas and even better. So I totally agree. It's definitely a growing experience. And it's one that'll make you a better leader when you allow them to make those decisions. And they want to, which is pretty cool too. They want that empowerment and they want to help. And it makes them feel like they have more ownership in your center.
Yeah, they definitely, it helps with work satisfaction when they feel like they, empowered is the word that you use, but that they have made some kind of impact, that
Yes.
they have created their own legacy in your center by
Right.
the things that they have come up with. And I think the really cool thing is when you do learn as a leader to open up to what other people do. It is so cool when you can learn from one of your employees. And especially like if it's somebody who is so different than you. I remember at one point I had an assistant director who was pretty much like right out of college and actually hadn't even really worked that much in childcare. But he had the most amazing emotional intelligence and had a way of talking to teachers about whatever the conflict was and being able to identify with their feelings and yet also kind of guide them to where we needed them to be. And just by saying, yeah, I understand. It's okay to be annoyed about this, but here's why we need to do it. And just by spending, he worked with us for maybe like a year and a half. I just learned so many things. Here I am, somebody who'd been in the field. I think I was like 25 years at that time. And here I was learning from this very young person coming in.
Right.
And that's really cool. When you can be humble enough to learn from somebody else, that's a really cool thing.
I totally agree, especially when you see, like for me, my director, she worked for me for 11 years. And one of the things I really enjoy is seeing the things that she's better at than I ever was. And like, for example, she actually does weekly classroom observations and weekly meetings with the teachers so that by the end of the month, and it's something I've never was able to accomplish. But she manages by the end of the month, every single one of our teachers has been observed and has had an actual meeting with her regarding the observation.
And so fantastic.
Yeah. And it's just something. So it's really something I love to see too, how she has taken what I've taught her and made it even bigger and better. When you watch somebody like that you've really trained starts to excel on the things that you've taught them and actually making it better. It's so cool to see. And like you were saying too, everybody has those different strengths. So when you combine those strengths too, you can just get this amazing team that is just really unstoppable, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And I think it also kind of brings up really, in some ways, where this conversation started, which is about emerging voices. And all of our voices are different. there is not one right way to teach a child, and there's not one right way to be a leader. There's a lot of concepts and there's a lot of best practices, but how we engage those and how we express those to the world or to our children and to our staff can be very different. And so that's why, in some ways, and I think, Evelyn, you're so much, you and I think are alike in this, that when we talk to people or support people, we give them concepts to think about, but it's not necessarily that you are right or wrong in which choice you make. And that was such a good, I think several times you've said this, don't second guess yourself, because the choice that you make, it will be okay. You've just got to see it through and take what comes with it.
Yes, that's one of my favorite things to really tell people, because through my own life experience, I created some disasters in my personal life because I froze. And because decisions became so overwhelming to me. And the fact that I had to make these decisions was such, it was so huge on my shoulders that instead of making decisions, I froze and did nothing. I was so overwhelmed by them. So I really had to figure out a way to help myself learn how to lessen that feeling of how big some of these decisions can be. And the other thing too is I used to beat myself up for them. I would look at my past and beat myself up. Oh, if only, those constant, if only I hadn't done this and that. And all of this had to do with me being a business owner. So I ended up just really researching, and my background is in neuropsychology. So looking at how the brain works, and, I just kind of sat down and decided, okay, I've got to really analyze how my brain works and how it happens. And I just decided that decisions are just that. They're just decisions. There are no rights. There are no wrong. And we get so stuck in our mind that I have to make the right decision. But honestly, who knows what the right decision is? What really is the right decision? There is no definition, especially in times like this, of what a right decision, to stay open or to close. There is no right decision there. It's just a decision. So when you take that power away from the decision-making process and you just look at it like these are just decisions, there is no right or wrong. Everybody is different and it is what it is. It helps to lessen the feeling of the weight on your shoulders of how heavy these decisions can be. And the other thing I had to really tell myself is that in the future, when we look back on in retrospect, we know the outcome. We know all the scenarios. We know what happened. Today, when we're making these decisions, we don't know the scenarios. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how long this is going to last, right? We don't know if this is going to happen again in the fall. Are we going to have to shut down our states again in the fall? And so the thing I promise myself now too is that I will not beat myself up for the decisions I make, because the person I am today does not have all the facts. And the person who I will be a year from now, who will be judging myself, will have all the facts. So it's really not fair for us to judge ourselves when we didn't know everything, So it's so easy for us to look at today, and I'm sure every single one of us can look at something in our past that we regret, a decision we wish we hadn't made. But honestly, it's so easy for us to judge ourselves for those past decisions because we know the outcome today. We have all the facts. But when we made those decisions, we didn't. So that's when we have to just let it go and promise ourselves, I'm going to make these decisions, I'm going to stand by them, and I'm not going to beat myself up.
That's so true. And I mean, one thing that I've been thinking just a lot about over the course of the years that I've managed in early childhood, how much the human condition, when we work with adults, that so many of the ways that we can work with each other can come right out of what we have learned with children, right?
Yes,
so
absolutely.
As adults, clearly, some of these decisions, they are big, whether you take a loan, whether you stay open or closed, and you do need to think in a really rational way, try to set some of the emotion to the side. But some of the other stuff that's, on some level, we have to lessen the load for ourselves. To a
Yes.
child, when we interact with them, if they make a mistake, we're kind to them and we say, you know what, we can restart today. We can have a little do-over. It's going to be okay. And so I think particularly for directors, really for anybody, you're going to be under stress through this whole thing. And you're nobody's expecting you to be perfect. There's
Right.
going to be a day you're a little grumpy. There's going to be a day you're tired. There's going to be a day somebody walks in on you and you're going to have really a horrible look on your face. Nobody can expect all of us to be perfect through this. And
Right.
so let yourself have some grace. And the more you can release that kind of perfectionism, the easier it's going to be for you to help meet the needs of others with grace as well. So I think it's just a real
Absolutely.
important point.
Oh, I totally agree with you. People, we are our worst critics, our own worst critics. And what we expect of ourselves, we would really never ask of anybody else. So I completely agree with you that we just really have to show ourselves some grace. And right now, our staff too, that's the other thing too, is understand that this is hard on them too. And they are coming in every day and they're adapting and they're figuring out, I pulled sensory out of my classrooms. So now my staff has to figure out, okay, what do I do now? That is the most popular thing to do. There's so much you can incorporate to
Yeah.
sensory. So giving them grace too, as well as ourselves in that, just recognizing every day, I think that this is really hard. And every day it's not going to be easy. And I know, if for people who listen to my podcast and watch my videos, I sound like a cheerleader all the time. But there are mornings I wake up and I just lay in bed and think like, oh, I don't know if I can do this today. What if I made the wrong decision? And I do question myself. I do still go through all of that, but then I just have to stop and tell myself, just stop it. You promise yourself you're not going to beat yourself up. You're going to get up. You're going to do this and it's going to be okay. And you will make mistakes. But honestly, how much are they really going to impact? I mean, one of the things I tell myself all the time too is I remind myself like 5 years ago, the things I was going through then that were so heavy and huge, how much of it is really affecting my life today? And some of it does affect my life still. But with time, everything becomes easier. And there's always a solution to everything with time, right? There's always like whether you just learn how to live with things or you've fixed mistakes that have been made. So that's just something I remind myself all the time. I kind of just try to project myself into the future mentally whenever I really just start falling down that rabbit hole of, just anxiety and it starts just to take me
Right.
over. I just project myself like, okay, you can't let this happen right now because honestly, 5 years from now, will it matter? I mean, what we're going through now, we will never, ever, ever forget this. But 5 years from now, will it really, what we're going through today, the adjustments we have to make because of COVID, the decisions we make, how much are they really going to impact our lives 5 years from now?
Right. And reminding ourselves that this is, even if it's a longer situation than we expected, it is still temporary. It's one stage.
Right.
But one thing I also thought of as I just heard you talking and having heard your podcast before and thinking about what people have said to me resonates with them. And that is how very important it is for us as leaders. Whether you're a lead teacher, whether you're some kind of speaker, whether you're an owner or you're a director, whoever you are, is to be willing and brave enough to tell your stories of imperfection and
Yes.
even your stories of failure. That is one of the most powerful things that you can do for the people around you. Because
Right.
what it does is it actually helps build confidence in others. If all we hear are the success stories, if that's all I'm listening to, when I come out of listening to whether it's a podcast or a talk or a conference, I just think there's no way I can be that person. And so those
Right.
stories make it manageable. They make it hopeful. And so it's so important, to share those and to help break down stigmas, whether it's about mental health, whether it's about financial trouble, whether it's about, whatever it could be, that those are important stories to tell in this industry that we're in.
I totally agree with you. It's what makes us human. I mean, we all are human. And I think, and that's really what motivated me to start doing this, the podcast and everything, is that I have been at the lowest point in my business where I've almost lost my business. I've been there, and I was able to not only build it back up, but to make a very successful company where I have changed a lot of what the industry standards are. So, and that's exactly where, especially through this whole COVID thing where everybody's facing these disasters and everybody just doesn't know, well, I've been there. I've faced it. Well, through my career, I faced two different disasters that one of them really came close to taking me out of business, just really came close to it. And the second one, I fared a little bit better, but not so, it was still a learning experience. And now this is my third go around with a major disaster that's affecting the business portion of things. And from my mistakes and my past failures, I have learned what not to do. And now I have built up this really strong business that really financially isn't being affected by this. And that's what I figured too. It's not because I'm great at business, it's because I have been there. I have been to the bottom, and I was forced to learn all this. It got to the point where either I was going to lose my businesses or I was going to learn how to become a business person. And that's
right.
where, my story, and now I can help people learn from my past mistakes and failures, and that now I know what not to do. So that's basically my whole theme, is just helping people learn from my mistakes.
Right. But also, that everybody out there already has some kind of resilient story in them.
Yes.
Even though it may not be as dramatic yet as you or I might have gone through, as far as we are into our own businesses and into our own careers, but everybody already has a resilient story. Yep. So this is the perfect time, and this is actually a strategy for handling anxiety, is to go back and think about a really hard situation you had and what did you do to get through that. It might be that you were bullied in high school. Well, how did you survive that? Because I can guarantee there's a piece of that can help you in this.
Yes, absolutely.
Or a big heartbreak where you thought you could not go on, without that person. Well, you can apply that in some way to this situation, that everybody here who's still alive and breathing has some kind of resilience in them.
Yep. And this is going to be a lot of people's resilience story. And that's one of the things I keep trying to tell people out there too, is that you can choose who you emerge from this as. If you really consciously think about it, that this is going to be your resilience story. This is going to be what drives you later in the future. But we have to make that conscious effort in that, okay, this is what I'm going to do in order to make this not my failure story, but my resilience story. So, and the other thing too is so many people are so afraid of failure, but honestly, failure is what helps us to grow. It's what forms and makes our characters. And we all have failures in our lives. The difference is for those of us who aren't afraid to get back up after we fall and who don't take that as the final straw. It's, that is, I think, really the difference between true failure and not failing. Is true failure is when you give up. But if you keep fighting and keep going, no matter how hard things get, no matter how bad they get, if you don't give up, you don't fail for real. So, and honestly, failure, as long as you get back up and do it again, it's okay. It's just a milestone in your life, and you can build back up. We built it once, we can do it again.
Yeah, and I think a key piece to that is to really watch our own self-talk I mean, that's so,
Yes.
it sounds so trite, but we all know that our words shape our thoughts. They change our thoughts, and our thoughts change our reality. I know there was a time where I had taken over, been hired to center that was in some deep trouble that I did not know about when I was hired. And I just knew this is going to be such an uphill battle as a person and as a leader. And I would wake up in the morning, and it would be like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'd go stand out on my porch. And I had this ritual of sitting out there, getting a little fresh air before I got going for the day, and just saying over and over again, you can do this. You can do this. Now, did I believe I could do it at that moment? No, I didn't.
Right.
But I just kept telling I just kept hammering it into myself. You can do this. Just one more day, one more day. And I learned a lot of self-care practices through that. I learned how to compartmentalize some of the negativity that I was dealing with at work in order to not take it home. And that's a skill now that I don't do that all the time. I haven't done it that much through the pandemic. I probably could do it more, but it is a skill that I can pull on when I really need to. So these moments, figure it out. This is your time to learn a new skill, a new mental skill, to get you through. And there's so many people out there, whether it's you, Evelyn, or me, or Beth Cannon, or anybody else out there. There's a lot of people who can really maybe give you what you need to think about for that day, whatever is bothering you, if you're open to it.
Yes. And I so agree. Like what you're saying, to add to that, is just surrounding yourself with positive people, no matter where you need to find them. If you need to go online and watch a video like your videos, Beth, mine, I don't care what it is, but really, really be careful. Social media is something that I think can be such a detriment. And I actually don't even scroll through my feeds right now because there's so much negativity. And I know for me personally, as somebody who has struggled with anxiety and depression in my life, I don't have room for that in my life. I can't expose myself. So I specifically will look people up who I know have a very positive message all the time. Every morning, it's actually how I start my days. I usually listen, since I'm a God girl, I usually listen to some kind of sermon or, something devotional, but I start every day with a positive message. And right now, if I'm starting to feel that overwhelm, I'll go listen to somebody's videos like yours or somebody else who I know is just going to be positive, uplifting, and has that good message, because right now there's plenty of negativity out there for us. And we have to really take that conscious effort to put the positive in our minds, because if we're not, then your brain is going to be overloaded. It's just how our neurological networks work. It'll just be overloaded with what you're exposing it to. So if you're,
we don't want to add to the noise that's out there.
Yes,
there is
absolutely.
So much negativity, and it comes from people's fear. They're just expressing what they're afraid of. But what happens is it creates a culture of being alarmist. And it can impact our ability to problem solve. So one thing I've been really paying attention to, just because I really I have a lot of people following who are global, so from different countries, and you and I both have people from different states where things are opening up in different ways. But I'm really paying attention to people's first instinct or reaction when they get their state or county or province or country's guidelines. The first reaction is huge. The first reaction is, oh my gosh, there's no way I could do this. And it's just a normal human response. So today I did something really interesting, because I saw a post, which was more of an alarmist post that a school had put up. And I'm not going to name what it is, because we're all, human beings trying to process things, but they had kind of communicated to parents in a very alarmist way. And they had shown before and after pictures of what the classrooms looked like before and what they look like now. And they were as sparse as you could possibly be. And so what I did was I just for myself, because there were also, it was posted in a Facebook group and it raised everybody's anxiety. But
Right.
when I read the post, I was like, well, I'm doing something similar to this, maybe not to that extent. So what I did was just as an exercise for myself, I rewrote the post and
Oh,
I
that's
started from the
awesome.
front. It was really interesting just to say, dear families. And I put a positive spin on it. So things like, we've been working very hard. Here are some of the things we've done in order to ensure that the children will still be loved and cared for. So the language we use,
Right.
it made a total difference. I mean, I don't know, maybe the people who read it didn't think so, but what I saw and what I had written, it was so different. It made me feel different and it made me trust and feel like I would still want to go to this school. And so that's one, I try not to give a whole lot of advice, but one thing to think about is before you post something or write a letter to parents, or maybe even before you talk to staff, and I know I have to be careful of this myself too, is process your own mental junk about it before you go speak
Yes.
into other people. And do what you need to do because you don't want to add to the noise that's out there.
I so agree with you. And so much of it is just mindset. Like, I don't know. I read so much, and even on my Facebook page, I've actually got to the point where I have to screen every post that comes in because I really work hard to keep the negativity off, and also so much false information out there. But the negativity and everything, so I screen every post that comes in, and I make sure that we're only getting, and questions are fine, but exactly what you're saying is these, that so many that are just filled with this gloom. Um, it is crazy. So I did something similar a couple weeks back where I did have to close down 3 of my classrooms since I just didn't have the numbers. So we reconstructed them. So I took pictures of the classrooms under construction and I posted it for my parents like, while you guys are at home, we are taking this opportunity to improve our center. So when all the children come back, it's beautiful and everything looks remodeled. And so it's exactly what you're saying. I mean, when I have to say, walked into the classrooms, it did make me very depressed. My building is usually so full of life, and going from 115 children a day to an average of 37 was really weighing me down. So that's when I decided, like, okay, I have to turn this negativity into a positive, which is when we decided to remodel the classrooms. And it really does help. And then posting it as this positive thing has really helped. So we constantly do these positive posts, and my center's actually back this week. We're back up to 74 children a day. So,
Wow.
which, yeah, is not
Congratulations. That's
something that
awesome.
but I think a lot of that is in the mindset and the messaging, because this entire time, what we post, what we put out there for our parents is very positive. And like you're saying, my staff is wearing masks. I mean, we could have easily posted something depressing about wearing masks, but, we had a lot of fun with it. We were actually, and I don't know if you've seen my Facebook page, it's kind of funny. We always put a funny spin on everything. So I think it's really helped my parents to see, like, wow, they've cleared this stuff out. They aren't doing this, but it's that positive spin we've put on everything that gives our parents enough confidence that I can have over 70 children here a day. So it really does, your interpretations of things really does matter, and you can control the narrative. You just have to be intentional about it.
And I just know, Evelyn, that there was a week that I was closed, and it was March 16th was the Monday. We were on spring break, and you were the first voice out there that was talking about it. And I remember you posted somewhere a picture of your teachers in masks. And I had
Yes.
already been wanting it. And you were the reason why I had my staff, because you posting that out there and being one of the first people to post that picture made it safe enough for me to make that choice.
Right.
And now others are making that choice. So you just never know the ripples that you as a person have, that any of us have.
Right. And it is just how you put your spin on it. I mean, we laughed about it. We turned it into I don't know. In my life, I just have this theory that if you're not going to laugh about it, I'm going to cry. So I might as well turn it into a joke. And, even though it's very serious, we could just be moping around because we have to wear these masks, but instead we just kind of we literally have turned it into a fashion statement here.
Yeah.
We have all different colors and themes, and we've just made it into this fun thing instead of being just like, oh wait, we could easily be complaining about it all the time, but instead we try to figure out a fun spin on. And if anyone's on my personal Facebook, or you'll see, I think I posted that in my group too, or just trying to put those fun spin on everything so that it doesn't feel so heavy and overwhelming.
Yeah, and I'm just surprised how resilient, because in my county, at one point, it was ordered that the children 2 and above wear it whenever they're in an essential business. So my 2-year-olds had to wear masks then, and we've kept it up. And it has been a non-issue. It's fascinating to see these little kids just playing like they normally have. But even more than that, I mean, it's just crazy. I know it's hard for people to believe, but with my 2-year-olds, their mask has become their comfort item in the classroom. Yes. So when we actually do have to take it away from them for them to eat, some of them get very upset. They want their mask back. So it's just funny at a time when we're a little careful about fabrics and things that are brought into the center, that the mask has become their snuggly item. So it's really kind of cool. And again, we can let the little children lead us. They will teach us how to get through this.
Oh, I so agree. So there's so many principles I've been finding where it's kind of funny. Even when I work with my membership group, I'll tell my girls something about this, we got to explain everything. And one of the people in my membership group said to me the other day, like, wow, it sounds a lot like how we train our staff to talk to our toddlers. Like, yeah, pretty much. If we just follow, that's what's working right now. So, well, Cori, this has been absolutely wonderful. It's great to be able to talk to you instead of just chatting back and forth on Facebook Messenger. It's awesome. So
it feels like we've been talking for years.
It really does. I know there's a few of us, I think after this, we need to do some kind of like conference together and something, because I totally agree. There's a bunch of people out there I'd love to connect with. I only live about an hour away from Lake Tahoe. So I keep thinking maybe I'll set something up in Tahoe after all this is over and do like some kind of, wouldn't that be great? We can all just get together after this, and it would be. I think we'll have to figure something out when everything is, maybe next summer when everything is really behind us.
Good. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate for the opportunity to chat with you and to be on your amazing podcast.
No problem. Thank you, Cori.